This is the Fellow Opus coffee grinder. I've had it for a little over a year. And I f***ing hate it. Let me start off by saying I don't want to pile on Fellow with this review. Generally speaking, I quite like their stuff. I own a bunch of other products of theirs, and I've even got some others on my wish list, their gooseneck kettle being one of them. I own a couple of the Fellow Carter Move mugs, which are insulated coffee mugs. I use them both as water bottles. Here you can see the white one, and I've got a matching black one at work. I really like that built-in splash guard. Stops me getting water down my front and in my beard. I've got their Fellow Stag XF coffee dripper, and of course one of the Fellow Atmos vacuum canisters to keep the beans fresh. I'll be honest, it doesn't hold its vacuum for much longer than 24 hours, but I'm making a coffee once or twice a day, so it's not a big deal. I think in future I'd probably look to get one of those air displacement ones. I think the Airscape is the sort of leading brand there. But this video isn't about any of those. However, if you would like to hear more of my thoughts on them, please let me know in a comment below. This video is about the Fellow Opus coffee grinder, which I do feel quite strongly about. In fact, I feel so strongly about it that after a 3-year hiatus, I've been inspired enough to dust off the old YouTube channel and make a video voicing said frustrations. Let's start off with some of the positives, because to give the Fellow Opus credit where it's due, it's not all that bad. First of all, the aesthetic. I really like how it looks. It's got that sleek, minimalistic kind of look. Comes in a matte black. It also comes in white, so it's going to fit into any kitchen countertop. James Hoffman, in his review of the Aiden brewer just recently, praised Fellow for having what he called a very clear design language, and I completely agree with that. I think you always know a Fellow product when you see it. I don't think it works in all instances. The Aiden brewer, to me, looks like a discarded something out of Minecraft. I've never played Minecraft, but I really like it, particularly in this space. I know some people don't necessarily like the plastic finish, but I can understand why they've gone with it. It keeps the price down, it keeps the weight down, thinking about Fellow shipping all over the globe. I can understand why they went with that as a materials choice, and I don't dislike it. The cost, from memory, I paid 329 New Zealand dollars for this thing. That's not cheap. But as far as coffee grinders go, it's certainly on the less expensive side. And this is how I know that life has changed, because 3 years ago I used to compare the price of everything to pints of beer. So if we say a pint of beer, 15 bucks, I think there'd be, what is that, 22 pints of beer. Now I compare everything to nappies. Just if you were wondering, this coffee grinder, approximately 914 size 1 nappies. As far as performance, I think it grinds very well. As you can see to the left of me, I have a Lumafusion Euro Piccolo, which is not known for being very tolerant with changing grind size and changing parameters, but I have got some lovely coffees using the Opus as the grinder and the Lumafusion as the brewer. I know the Opus does get a little bit of criticism for having a rather finicky adjustment mechanism, which I completely understand, but I'll be honest, in time I've become quite indifferent to. You may have watched other videos about the Opus, but if you haven't, just to quickly recap, there's sort of 2 adjustment rings to fine-tune your grind size. So there's an outer ring, which controls, I think they call the macro adjustment. I might have that the wrong way around. And then an inner ring to do the more sort of granular adjustments, or the micro adjustments, or vice versa. Basically, if the outer ring is too big of a step from, say, 3 to 3.25, you can then go into the inner ring and dial things in a little bit more. You start getting into decimal points and fractions and things. It gets all very confusing, but what I did find very helpful is there's a companion app for this grinder called Beanie. I don't believe this is an official Fellow thing. I think this is made by the coffee community, which is quite cool, and it does take a lot of the guesswork out of fine-tuning this thing. You can store your coffees in there, you can save which grind sizes have worked in the past, where things are currently at, and it makes all of that a whole lot less confusing. I remember getting this thinking that that was quite a cool, novel thing to have a wee app that goes alongside the coffee grinder, but in time that became, I'll be honest, a pain in the ass. Nowadays, I just find a grind size that roughly works, usually somewhere around the 3 mark, and I just go from there. If I step up the dosage or the temperature on the La Pavoni, I usually get a pretty good espresso. If I find a bean that I really want to fine tune, because I know there's some notes in there I'm just missing out on, I do have the option of sort of fine tuning, but I find these days it's all just a bit of a faff. And most importantly, the biggest benefit of the Opus coffee grinder is that it does beat hand grinding, which is what I was doing for the 2 years prior to getting this thing. I think it's just in here somewhere. Aha! This is the Varia, I can't remember the model, but a good little coffee grinder. It served me well for a couple of years. Still keep it running these days for when I'm doing pour over, which allegedly this machine can do. I only use it for espresso though. Benefits of this is it is very nice and quiet. I got 2 wee ones sleeping in this house. I don't want to be waking them up first thing in the morning. However, it is very time consuming, especially when you're trying to grind fine enough for espresso. And if you want to make more than one coffee, just forget about it. As far as convenience goes, the Opus wins 10 times out of 10. So, it's not all bad. There is a lot to like about this machine, particularly for the price. And look, I know how online shopping goes. If you're watching reviews of the Opus because you're looking to pick one up right now and you're looking for that sweet bit of confirmation bias or some justification to hit buy now, then look, stop the video here. But if you want my full, honest opinion on the Fellow Opus, then let's move on to some of the frustrations. And to be honest, there really is only one: retention. So, Fellow on their website, they claim that the Opus coffee grinder has a low grind retention and they employ some sort of anti-static technology to stop coffee grounds getting trapped in the hopper and the grinding mechanism. And thinking about things rationally, you can be fairly tolerant of a claim like low grind retention. You think about it, it's a high impact environment in there. You've got a couple of bits of metal churning against these little dense coffee beans, grinding them into smaller pieces and smaller pieces and smaller pieces. You can expect there's probably gonna be a little bit of static electricity in there. Maybe the coffee beans have a little bit of oil in them that's gonna get caught somewhere and cling on to some of those grinds. I fully anticipate there's going to be some retention in any coffee grinder. But when you make a claim like low retention, what do we as consumers consider that to be? 10%? That seems pretty reasonable. So if I put 10 grams of coffee beans in, I would expect in an ideal world to get 10 grams of ground coffee out. But allowing for a little bit of tolerance, maybe we get 9 grams. Is that the case with the Opus coffee grinder? Let's find out. Smash a bit more of this. Cold. So let's get a wee aerial shot going. Scales, very important. Got a fresh bag of coffee from Crossbow Coffee Roasters here in Nelson, collected earlier this week, roasted on the 17th, so that is 2 weeks and 3 days old, so really perfect to start using that now. I think let's just pull this out here. Oops. Chuck in another angle, because why not? Worth mentioning, I gave this thing a deep clean this morning, made sure there was no coffee grounds retained in there, keep test conditions as fair as possible, and to give it credit, it does clean up very well. Right, this is the point of the video where we kind of go off script. I've just left a note saying trial coffee and see what happens. So let's do just that. Get to top up the Atmos vacuum canister. So we're going to have a few goes at this. To save us a bit of time and to save me a bit of coffee, we're just going to try putting 10 grams in and see what comes out. Might cop some flack for my choice of scales, but these little ones from Wakako I've actually found to be very good. 10 grams. 10 grams in, we're not going to RDT or wet this or anything weird. We're just going to put that in and see what happens. Just if you want to see that from this angle, a little power button down here. You press it once for 30 seconds, twice for 60 seconds. Not the most pleasant grind to listen to. Not the worst. Right, so that was 60 seconds of grinding, which is a little bit too long for 10 grams of beans, so maybe these are quite dense or something, I don't know. Going by ear, it sounded like it was done, so let's take that out of there. 10 grams in, let's see what comes out. This is 4.8 grams. Here's where my frustrations really kick in with this machine, and this is something I have to do every single morning. Bearing in mind I said I've got 2 wee kids in this house. It's not enough to just tap this coffee grinder. That probably helped. 4.8, now it's at 7.1, so a little tap. If I give it another tap, 7.5. Let's give it one more tap just for luck. 8.1. Every single morning I go to use this coffee grinder. I put 14 grams in for my Lumafusion and I want 14 grams out. I tap it once, I tap it twice, maybe I get to 13, 13.1, 13.2. I have to lay into this thing to get the full 14 grams of grounds out of the machine. Without a word of a lie, that is my workflow every single morning. 9.4, we're still not there. 9.4. Try grinding a little bit more. It doesn't sound like there's anything there. Give it another tap. 9.6. So that's telling me somewhere in here there is trapped 0.4 grams of coffee. So this happens every day. You got 0.4 grams left over from yesterday and 0.2 from the day before. Eventually you're going to be getting this old, somewhat stale coffee mixed in with your fresh grounds. So let's start again. Let's do exactly the same, knowing that there's 0.4 in there. Let's try another 10. Saying 10.01, so let's chuck an extra 0.1 grams in there just for luck. Now we know there's an extra half a gram of coffee in this grinder. Let's do it again. Another thing you'll notice, more so from this angle, is it does spit quite a lot of grounds onto the bench. Really notice that with a white countertop. So I'm not really sure which camera to look at. I've put my microphone over here for some reason. So there was 10 grams in. We know there's a half a gram in there, extra coffee. 6.0. 40% retention. Let's give it a tap and see what happens. Start light. 7.6. Give it a tap from the side. 8.4. 8.9. Let's pick the whole machine up and see what happens. 8.9. So I'm losing count now. That's now 1.6 grams of coffee in this machine somewhere. I'm going to try it again. I'll stand to the side and give this thing a hit without the cup there, because this is a frustration I have quite regularly. When I take the cup away and tap it, all of a sudden that 1.5 grams will just appear. Yeah, there it is. Okay, let's abandon that one. We'll do one more. Feeling pretty confident that was maybe that 1.5 grams just came out. 10.0. 10 grams in. 5.3 grams out, nearing 50%. That is not good. I'm just going to point out, I'm not doing this for dramatic effect. This is genuinely my workflow every morning. .1. Maybe this will be the one. 10.4. How much of that's new and how much of that's old? I think you're starting to see my frustrations here. I want to talk to this camera again. I know what the coffee nerds of the world are thinking right now. Of course, you got to be spraying it with some water. You know, you can't be putting dry coffee beans in there. I'm going to tell you now, it did not help. But just for the purpose of showing things on camera, I'll give that a go now with a little bit of the RDT and see if that makes any difference. Right, so another 10 grams in. It's becoming quite messy over here, killing my OCD. As promised, we'll give it a little spray and see if that makes a difference. Worth mentioning, I'm not a big believer of the spray technique. I think a wet teaspoon does the job. I sometimes even give it a little puff from the steam wand. That has or hasn't helped in the past. Right, 10 grams in, a little spray of water, RDT technique, whatever you want to call it. Let's see what this does. Right. I'm not going to tap it. It's just see. I don't know how well you can see that from up there. That says 2.9. Invariably, that little spritz of water significantly worsened things. That's not even 30% of the coffee beans I put in coming out as coffee grounds. I'm going to be honest with you, that is the worst I've seen this before. Give it a tap, see what happens. It's probably caked in there because of that little bit of moisture. 7.3. How rough do I need to get with this thing? I'm just going to leave this ungodly mess behind me for a little while. A few different things that I know the coffee community is going to want to know. Different times of year hasn't made a difference. Different humidity in the air hasn't made a difference. Different coffees hasn't made a difference. Different amounts of moisture hasn't made a difference. Different grind settings hasn't made a difference. Nothing has really helped with the retention issue in this low retention coffee grinder from Fellow. It has been underperforming since day one. And I know what people are going to say the easy solution is. Why not just buy another one? Come here, let's have some real talk with Papa Tips. The coffee influencer type, you know, the ones, the full-time YouTube reviewers, they're not real people. That is to say, they're not real-world consumers like you and I. If they review a coffee grinder and they don't like a particular feature of it, they're not stuck with it day in, day out. They just move on and go to the next one that they've either expensed or had sent to them for free. People like you and I, we buy a coffee grinder like this with a slight inconvenience. We're stuck with it. Cost of living these days, a couple of kids to care for. My wallet couldn't take buying a new coffee grinder every single time that there's a slight inconvenience. God knows my marriage couldn't take it. Those with a wife or a partner or a spouse that doesn't share the same enthusiasm for high pressure extracted bean juice will have a hard enough time convincing them that they should get one machine and let them take up a bit of bench space and make an ungodly mess like this. Let alone having to go back to them and say, hell, you know what, you were right, maybe I should have stuck to cranking it out by hand. Stop it. What I'm trying to say here is that if I buy a lemon, I'm stuck with that lemon until it breaks or until frustrations hit a boiling point. And in truth, I'm not there yet. Well, the Fellow Opus coffee grinder frustrates the hell out of me. It does what I need it to do. It just requires a little bit of encouragement. But with an eye to the future, thinking about times when grass is greener, I'd love to know, which non-bank breaking coffee grinders have you tried? Are there any you'd recommend? Or do you have a wish list going, and after watching this video, is the Fellow Opus coffee grinder still on that list? Let me know in a comment below. Otherwise, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. I'm gone. Well, there's that other 3 grams.